example of the seeds. This is, can anybody think of a plant that's like this one? Dandelion. Yeah, so the plants that are related to dandelion in the composite family have this windborne seed. Okay, so the seed's very light. When it dries up, it detaches from the flower, the base of the flower, I guess you call it, I forget that part. But then this part here, it's like a feather, and it gets picked up by the wind and can travel a great distance. And actually, this is kind of cool. Well, it's kind of cool to me. So if you happen to like kick it, and then the seeds kind of go down, I'm sure you've all seen dandelions, right? Okay. So you say, okay, well, the dandelion seeds low to the ground, they don't really go very far. I mean, they might go like 30 yards max. The problem with a lot of these windborne seeds, where they really spread, is if it's a situation where they actually go up, a few hundred feet in the air, and then they can get in the airstream and carry for miles. So when we have those situations where we have high winds, or we have like Santa Ana's come in during a period when it's dry and the plants are flowering, that's when I get people that call me up and they say, 3 months later, and they say, I've got this weed I've never had before, and there's none around me, and I don't know what it is. It's probably because it was picked up by the Santa Ana's, gone into the atmosphere, and then moved for miles. So that's an interesting situation. So low spread doesn't go very far, but if it does get in the air, it can go quite high. Okay. Does anybody? This is a really big picture of this, but does any? Wow. Okay. Okay. So is Oxalis clover?
No.
Is it related to clover?
It looks like it.
Okay. It's a plant. They're both angiosperms, but it's not a clover. Okay. But a lot of people think it is because both Oxalis and clovers have trifoliate leaves. So this is a leaflet here. But just to kind of tell you, I'm not going to talk about too much, but just to tell you that the leaflet for Oxalis is heart-shaped. Okay, clover is not, so just to kind of let you know. But also, this is the seed pod. And then what happens is this dries out. So the pods will stick straight up. As it dries out, there's this little, I don't know what you call it, not an organ, it's not an appendage. It's like a little spring that's hooked onto the seed. So down here, you see it's a little bit dark under there. So the seeds have this like spring, and so when this dries out and just gets a little bit easier to push through, that spring the energy is released, and those seeds are spewed like 3 or 4 feet from the plant. So that's how that spreads. The problem is that vibration also will cause those pods to break open, and that would be like a lawnmower. So sometimes somebody's mowing a lawn, and then they'll go over a bunch of seed pods of Oxalis, and the pods will break open, and then where do the seeds go? What's that? They grow underneath the lawnmower, right? And that's usually this moist area, and the seeds are kind of sticky, so they stick to that soil. To the grass clippings. And then you go over to the next area, and then you put the lawnmower down, and then you spread the Oxalis that way. And so a lot of times people that don't have it, if they have a lawn service where the guys go from one place to one place with the same lawnmower, of course, that's actually a pretty good source of seeds contaminating, not just Oxalis, but other things, contaminating other people's yards. In fact, I have heard, somebody told me they do this, and I have heard a couple other people, where they do have a lawn service, but they have their own lawnmower. So they tell the crew that, when you come here, just take this lawnmower, mow my lawn with that. And that way they know what's going on there. Okay, what about these two? This is the same plant? Cocklebur. Okay, so this is an immature cocklebur, and this is what it looks like. When it's mature, it's brown. See here, the little hooks here are soft, so you can hold them. And then they're a little bit harder. And what happens when they get harder? They hurt. They stick to dogs. They stick to socks. They stick to clothes. Okay, they'll stick to each other. They'll do that. Okay, so if you are ever so inclined to make a Cocklebur poodle, you're welcome to do that. I have been told that this only took 20 of the birds to do that, so you don't need very many. It looks a lot to me like a balloon animal that you made, and so I say you can just have them fight, and I know who's going to win. all right, with that. So, so this is something you can do with Cocklebur. But I do want you to, yeah, right, it's a use story. But this does have a big benefit to industrial, the industrial world, I guess you'll call it. Does anybody have an idea? Yeah, okay, Velcro. So for those of you that don't know where that Velcro came from, you see it's got these little hooks here? Okay, right? And it's not quite so visible here, but as we said, somebody said, well, it sticks to your dog, sticks to your clothes, and so forth. So probably about, 70 or 80 years ago, a Swiss engineer happened to, just take a look at that. He was on his clothes and on his dog, and he just pulled it off, and for whatever reason, he decided he was going to look at it under a microscope and saw the hooks, and then he saw his socks had loops, and he's like, it was one of those incredible moments. And then about 20 years later, he was able to actually find the right kind of plastic and the right kind of glue and the right kind of strength of these hooks and so forth to actually commercialize Velcro. So, and just to kind of get you to remind you, what the name Velcro comes from. Does anybody remember that? So the Vel is for velvet. Okay, that's where that starts. That was like the original mashup of two names. The Vel's from velvet, so that is the loop part. And the crow, so Velcro come from crochet, which I guess is hook.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so that's where it all came from. So there you go. So weeds, good, right? Okay. That's the reason why 6-year-olds can't tie their shoes, right? Okay. All right, so let's go back there. 6, not 60. That's 6.
Some 6-year-olds.
It's 6. Just a single number. Okay, so someone brought up the soil seed bank. Okay, so what's a bank? Where you save stuff, where you deposit something, and then where you eventually take it out, right? It's not, you want to use it at some point, okay? And then, does anybody here work for Bank of America? Okay, good. Okay, so then also, so let's just say you get money, okay? You put it in your bank, right? Okay, you can take it out. If you happen to bank with Bank of America, some of that money is actually not available for you to take out because they use it for fees, right? So not everything that you put in comes out, right? Okay, so I want to be clear on that one. So just use that as your analogy. So when weeds flower, or any plant flowers, produces seeds, where do the seeds go?
The bank.
Okay, they go in the soil. Okay, the soil. Okay, I heard somebody say that. So yeah, don't overthink this. Okay, so the soil, where the seeds are stored, that's the seed bank, right? Okay, so the withdrawals are what? What can cause seeds to be withdrawn from the bank?
Birds.
Insects.
Okay, to be withdrawn for. So when you say birds and insects, what does that mean?
They eat them.
Okay, so some of them are taken away that way. So those are like the fees, okay, that the bank has given you. Where else can they go? When they sprout, right? Okay, so that's the idea. So they want to sprout. So you have some that actually sprout. Some are eaten by birds and insects. What else can happen to them? They could die from what? Mold. Okay, so I'm sure you planted your own garden seeds and they've gotten kind of moldy or things like that. So yeah, so not all of them are going to make it. Some of them are dormant. Some of them will sprout. Okay, so that's how they're withdrawn. So this is a seed bank. This is just something that you can just take some soil. Just go in your yard someplace where you just have some soil. You put it in a tray and water it. Put it in some warm place and just water it and see what comes up. Okay. There's probably 1,000 weed seeds in here. Okay. Although it does give you an indication of what you can expect, like especially if you do it early in the season before the temperature is really good for them to sprout naturally. If you put them in a warm space, you sort of predict what you're going to get. You know what you're in for. So if you have a high weed season or a low weed season or something like that. So this is a weed called common groundsel. This generally grows in the winter. But around here we can find it year-round, to say. Each one of these flowers, okay, so it's got probably 25 flowers here. This is the flower when it's open. These seeds are ready to go. It's related to the dandelion, so it's kind of got that airborne seed thing going on. So each one of these flowers probably has 50 seeds in it. So this one little plant, which I think is about this big, probably has 1,000 seeds. That's considerable. And you could have, well, we'll go to the next one. So it's got about 1,000 seeds. The seeds could land, obviously they'll be in the seed bank. And then even if only 50% of them survive, right, how many have you got left? 500. Yeah, that's still a lot of seeds. Okay. All right, so the common groundsel is an annual weed. Yeah, so an annual plant, annual weed, same kind of life cycle. There's nothing special about weeds as far as their life cycle if they're an annual. So they get planted, and then they germinate, right? Then they grow, they flower, pollinate, seed set, and so forth. Okay? So let's take a look here. All right. So if you're going to control them, this is where you're going to use your little clicker here. All right? If you're going to control an annual plant, when's the best time to do it?
So are you saying when is the best time to control?
When's the best time to control annual weeds? Is it at germination? Is it the best time?
Before germination.
Well, put your clicker. Okay? Put your answer. If you think it's germination, press A. If you think it's growth, press B, so forth. So I'm going to give you like 1 second more. So everybody press it whether you know or not. So I just want to know. Okay. Yeah. Me too. All right. So I'll do 39. We'll see how it shook out. What you guys think? Okay. So 3/4 you think at germination. Or 2/3 think at germination. A lot of people say at growth. Some people say at flowering, and nobody said pollination, seed set, or plant size. Okay, so someone that said germination, give me your rationale for choosing that. Okay.
If you hold them up during germination, then you're taking the whole plant and they don't set seeds.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't ever come up.
Okay, so
They're easier.
okay, so I guess we need a little botany terminology here. So germination is just when it starts sprouting. You don't see it yet. Okay. Okay.
Okay, we want to redo.
You want to redo? Okay. Okay. So I guess it's partly my fault. I guess I should have said germination and then emergence after this. So okay. So but in the big picture of thing, because you said hoe it up, but in the big picture of things, actually germination is the best time to control it. Okay. And then somebody said growth. Why? What's your rationale for that one?
Because
Because you have time to germinate, so you can visually see if you're hoeing them up.
Okay. So he says you can see them, and okay, you actually can see them when they've grown, so you know where what you have to do to control them.
Well, if you can get it during the growth time, it won't go to seed, and
Okay.
therefore it won't propagate.
Right.
So that's a time to catch it before it gets in the cycle.
Right. So that's so precisely right. So what you want to do is, and as you said, you want to prevent it from going to seed, because every time it goes to seed, you're doing what?
spreading it.
What did we just see in one of those previous slides? You're adding to the seed bank, okay? And we don't want to add to the seed bank, okay? We want to deplete the seed bank. So we want to do whatever you can to control that plant before it goes to seed. Now, some people said flowering. Okay, now, does anybody want to stand up and say why that is? Okay. Go ahead. You like flowers? So you want to wait till they flower? Okay. Okay. Go on.
I didn't say flowering, and I don't know if this is true, but the Bermuda buttercup, the Oxalis with the bulbs, what I read is that you're supposed to let it flower so that the bulbs expel as much energy as possible and then tear it up.
Okay, that's a perennial, though.
Right.
Okay, we're talking annuals. Okay. 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 And we'll get to perennials in a second. Okay, so. Okay, short of you like flowers, okay. The problem with waiting till it's flowering, which a lot of people do, because sometimes you don't even notice the plant until it flowers, because many times it flowers a different color than green. So that's kind of their indication, like, oh, I have a yellow flower plant here, and I don't expect to see one. I have weeds. Okay, I should control it. It's very common. I mean, I personally can walk around my garden every day. Okay, I will look at it every day, no problems. You know, I might be pulling out a small one here and there, and I swear I'll walk in there one day and there will be a plant this big, a weed this big, and it's south there.
Overnight.
And and I'm like, where did that come from? And the only reason I notice it is because it flowered. The thing about flowering that you want to avoid waiting till it flowers is because many times these annual weeds, even though you pull them off, they can still they're not actually dead, okay? So they can still push a lot of their carbohydrates and photosynthase into that flower, okay? And then that flower can continue to mature. Okay? So sometimes, even if the plant, if it looks like it's closed, let's say it hasn't even been pollinated, some of these plants actually can produce seeds without pollination. For example, dandelion is one of those. So what happens, and I'm sure you can try this yourself, you know, go pull out something and then just let it sit on the ground, something that has buds. If it doesn't have buds, it won't continue. But if it's got a flower that's not fully emerged or fully open, you know, put it out, let it sit someplace and watch it, and you will see it, you know, 9 times out of 10 will continue to produce seeds. Okay? So that's why I want to get it before it flowers. Okay? If you can't, I mean, definitely get it at flowering and prior to all these other things. So you want to kind of get it. Best thing is from here before. Okay. So what about a lot of people wait till the plant starts to die. Okay, that's too late, right? Okay. How many people have remembered? Because crabgrass is just starting now, but how many people remember that they had crabgrass last summer? Okay, I see a few people. When did you really start noticing that you had crabgrass? Now, I know it's probably haven't even thought about it, but when did you start notice that you had crabgrass?
When it's seed set.
When it's seed set. Many times, crabgrass grows for the summer. Many times, people don't even notice they have crabgrass because it's the same color as the turf, or if they're not really in tune with it, it's actually a different color, but they just want something green. But in the fall, as soon as we get a little bit of a cold temperature, it tends to turn purple. And then people say, oh, I have crabgrass, I better do something about it. Okay, what can I spray, or what should I do? And I say, what?
Pull it out.
I said, don't do anything. It's already done all its everything it can do. I mean, it's already set its seed. The seeds are in there for next year. That plant's going to die in a couple weeks anyway. You know, you're cooked for this year. You know, think about next year. Okay, so that's one of the things just to kind of remember about the plant's life cycle itself. You know, whether you need to take any action or not. All right. So here we have annuals. Remember I said, so you have weeds, there's annuals or perennials. Weeds are just like any other plant. They just have some characteristics that make them a little bit more aggressive and invasive and so forth. Which reminds me, I never answered that question about the difference between invasive weeds and other weeds. Okay, but I'll get to that, hopefully. So annuals, just like any other annual, completes its life cycle in 1 year, and generally around here, 1 season. Okay? So weeds are classified also as summer annuals and winter annuals. Summer annuals are what we're coming into now. When the temperature gets warm, they start to sprout. They'll grow through the summer. At the end of the summer, they will start to die back. They've produced all their seeds. They've probably been producing seeds all through the summer, but they're going to be done when it gets cold, and then they'll die back. And the seeds just stay in the ground until the next spring, right? And then there's the other ones, the winter annuals that take over in the fall. Okay? So they will start growing usually when we get like our first rain. A little cooler temperatures, they'll start growing, they'll grow through the winter, they'll be producing all their weed seeds during that period of time. When it gets hot, they'll die back. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so we have winter annuals and summer annuals. All right. So here's a plant, it's pretty common here, annual bluegrass. So give me a guess and use your clicker. You think it's a winter annual, a summer annual, or a perennial? 5, 4, 3. Wait. Okay. It's not like it's for money. Come on. It's anonymous. It's fun. So, anyway. All right. So about half and half winter and summer annual, and then a small percentage thought it was a perennial plant. Okay. Okay. So I'm just curious. Okay, those of you that thought it was perennial or said it was perennial, why did you say that?
Well, because I see it come up in my yard every year.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's an interesting. So, all right. All right. Okay, I'll just talk about that later. Okay, and then the folks that said it was a winter annual. Okay, so you would say that you see it in the fall and you don't really see it in the summer. You see it in the fall and winter, you don't really see it in the summer. Right? Is that probably why? Annual? And then the other people say I see it in the summer more than I see it in the winter. Okay, this is actually a winter annual.
It emerges in the fall.
And I think I can see the reason for every one of these answers, though. Okay? And the problem is that it's really a cool weather plant, but under high moisture and if it's in the shade, you can find it year round. Okay? So it's a little bit tricky. But it does grow more in the winter. You can find it everywhere in the winter, but in the rest of the year, like the summer, you might just find it like if you're like next to a shaded wall and the area is always moist. Okay? So just because something's a winter annual or summer annual doesn't mean that it's only going to be found those times of the year, because a lot depends on the environment. And then as far as a perennial, I can kind of see that because you say
Well, I meant all year, like
You can see it.
around my oaks, sometimes it's just always there.
it's always there.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, okay. To be a perennial in general, though, it has to have some kind of vegetative organ that it sprouts from. So it could be like a stone, a tuber, a bulb, something like that. And this clearly does not have any of those. This is seed to seed. Now, the thing about what makes it such a problem, it can go seed to seed in less than a month. And then the seeds are ready to germinate immediately. It's very little dormancy. Not to say that it doesn't have dormancy, but a single plant, the plants sometimes are only this big, could have 500 seeds on its own, again, and can produce numerous generations over the course of a winter. So that's what can be a bad problem. Okay? Let's try another one. Okay, this is crabgrass. So is this a winter annual, summer annual, or perennial? And people often ask me, like, well, how do I know I have crabgrass? And one of the things is, just to kind of let you know, many times, especially in smooth crabgrass, what we have mostly around here, it's got a little bit of a reddish tinge to at the base. And the leaves are kind of soft and broader than most turf grass. Okay, let's see what you guys did. Okay, some people said winter annual. Majority of people said it's a summer annual, and then there's a few people that said perennial. So this is, in fact, a summer annual. Okay, so it's starting to germinate now. They generally germinate. Temperatures around 50, 52, something like that. So that's when we start getting the soil temperature. And by temperature, I mean soil temperature. So the soil temperature is just coming into that. So the winter annual, folks. Anybody want to be brave? Tell me why you thought that. Okay. All right, chickens. All right. Okay. Yeah. So you probably will not see crabgrass in the winter. All right. That's one that, unlike annual bluegrass, you probably won't see that in the winter time. You won't see that year round. Okay. So summer annual. So we'll see it, and again towards the fall it'll start dying back. Perennial. How come some people thought it was perennial?
You said it was stolen or something like that.
That it perenniates from. Okay,
Yeah.
so these really don't have a stolon. You might think it does because it spreads along the ground. Okay, but it's not like a true stolon. It very sometimes, but very rarely, it'll root at the nodes. But thank you for listening. Okay, and some people do think it's perennial because it does spread. But in many cases, if you get it early enough, you can just pull it out by the center. It actually has a very shallow root system, and that's one of the reasons why it's a weed in many lawns is because people tend to irrigate. Did you already have the irrigation class? Okay, so what did they say? How should you irrigate your lawn? Deep and infrequently, right? Mm-hmm. Many people do 5 minutes every day or something like that. And that encourages the growth of these shallow-rooted weeds because the water is just at the top. And so these weeds are always in a nice, moist environment. It's perfect for their growth. So if you want to reduce the amount of smooth crabgrass, you have to move towards that deep, infrequent watering. We find that a lot. One of the places I can find it first in many people's yards is next to a sprinkler head. Because the sprinklers come up, they irrigate, and then they drip. Okay, so it's always moist right there. Okay. All right. Tell you what, let's take a break, right? Okay, let's do that, and then we'll continue on with this a little bit.
Hey, thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Okay.